Thank you very much. And this is Jackie Higgins and she's going to say stuff.
Thank you so much, Mike. I just wanted to say thank you to all the presenters. I know we're all very busy and it takes a lot to put together such beautiful presentations, but it's really important. It's important for our industry to know what's happening out there and to continue to spread the word about what we do. So thank you. And thank you to all our sponsors. Without our sponsors, Bellegarde and RCP Rock and Village Nurseries in particular for this particular event, these would not happen. So with that, thank everyone for attending. I'm going to open up to questions to all of the presenters. If anyone has any questions, please just raise your hand.
So my question's for Meryl. I know where you went. And I won't, talk about trapezoidal shapes, but you categorize each front yard parkway with easy, difficult, depending on trees. So, and then I saw you mentioned the number for the difficult ones. With is that just a factor of like removing hardscape? Because that seems pretty straightforward. What made that such an expensive retrofit versus lawn?
The hardscape ones were, the pricing that they're out were just there, but the hardscape ones were not as expensive as the tree ones. The city came out and said that we will remove no mature trees. And so the trees were basically thrown out, and the hardscape was more viewed as the neighbor or the person who lives there has put time and investment into that. And some people, even though, yes, they don't own it, they don't truly own it, people sometimes feel like they own it. And so it was viewed more as if we try to tear out the hardscaping that they, put their time and money into, that they might have some issue with that. But you're right, and the fact that it is just a rip and tear out type of project. But it was more from the political, we don't want to make the neighbors angry type side. So it was priced a little higher.
Any other questions?
So a question for Jim. Several questions. So trees, you mentioned that you've come across your first non-lined pond. And you also mentioned trees cut into liners.
No, what I meant that trees actually break up the roots and subroots and actually provide better infiltration of the soil. So they're actually very beneficial for bioretention.
But if it's lined?
You can't use it. You can't use it.
So then tell us about your unlined one.
City of La Mesa is, it's an interesting project. City of La Mesa, interesting enough, University Avenue, I think most people know that. It's a very wide street. The medians are 18 feet wide, and they're taking upstream, almost every other block, they're taking upstream runoff from all the streets and neighborhoods and bringing already exists that goes into storm drain. What we're doing is plugging those up and then forcing them downstream into these bioretention and collecting all the water and cleaning them out. And so it's very wide, so the soils engineers allowing us to put in liners on both sides of them and then put trees in them. And so I think our last presentation, GARS showed a lot of trees that were settling in bioretention. I have a feeling that a lot of people think that they can just put trees in bioretention. Trees need to be planted just like any other tree. They need to be set on native soil. So a lot of times you need to bring up that soil in the bioretention itself, set them on there. They can't be set on the gravel. They can't be planted on top of the bioretention, the bioretention soil. The soil itself can be planted around it, in my opinion. The 2 times the width of the planting, it can be the bioretention soil. I've had a lot of engineers and water resource engineers come back and say, well, that's interrupting my amount of flow, and I will have to say, and even our water resource department says, the benefit of that tree giving you or breaking up that soil below takes away from that volume, so that they say the two actually help each other, so you should not take away from the volume. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Does that answer your question?
And then your other statistic about the 6 to 8% of a site, I've seen it vastly greater than that. I've seen 50%.
Wow, 50%, 6% of the non-porous surface. So roofs, streets, okay.
That seems really low.
Well, you're just not working with the right. And as both these guys demonstrate too, when you put green roofs in and you put decomposed granite in, you put interlocking pavers in, you start reducing that amount of area that's required. So you can play with all these factors to really reduce those areas. So 50%.
Yeah, I can't.
You guys
I
have
still can't
no.
believe it, but it's insane.
I've seen 8% real high,
The
and I've
entire
seen
parking
4%
lot is
low.
porous paving, lined, and basins everywhere, and swales everywhere.
I don't see how that's possible. I mean, typical sites with the building and parking requirements.
I think it has to do with how bad your soil is, and what the infiltration rates are, and what kind of LIDs you have to do.
Yeah, the only thing about that is even if the soil's bad and you line it, you still, my figure is still 6%. So that could be.
Oh, I just said that there is a possibility maybe that particular site was treating not only that parking lot but some other offsite. But she said it's not. She thinks it's really just for that. So 50 is really high. Do you have another question? Just a quick question. What species do you use trees in terms of mobile flow? Could you enlighten us with that?
I'm sorry.
What species of tree?
Who had I had a conversation with that? Maybe you guys can answer it, but I don't think there's really again, you have that condition where you're going to have standing water for 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
It really, that anaerobic condition that occurs, that rottingness that may occur, really affects more shrubbery than, in my opinion, trees. You have probably better trees when you have trees like riparian trees that are normally have that in nature, which is oaks and sycamores, and those are probably your better choices.
One of the things we try to do is get the bioswale wide enough so the edges aren't part of the bioswale. So we're planting, they don't have to worry about that depth. So if we can get more infiltration towards the center. And if you have, it's a lot better if you have good infiltration. When you don't, I mean, sometimes there's the mechanical means that the engineers have to use to mitigate that, and dry wells and that sort of thing. But a combination of those things could probably create, when you do the bioswale, so you can, on the upper edges, you can keep that with soil, so you can plant pretty much whatever tree you want, drought tolerant tree, not a ficus, just not a ficus.
No. Yeah, that is. But also, how about in the basin, like what kind of stuff often, because my consideration is like a littering, so the leaves fall, and then the maintenance one thing, and of course from water quality, it's always years debatable whether that would actually release nitrogen with specific like a sycamores or that. So I mean, it's all. From landscape architecture point of view, of course, I totally support to plant riparian species in fall nutrition kind of area, but then the water quality, like, more kind of people always challenge us, put that way. So what's your response?
They're wrong.
I'm trying, been working on that side of the fence.
Over here.
Yeah, thanks. Excuse me, thanks.
I thought you weren't going to speak anymore.
I'm just minutes now, and I'm about to make you speak. But I have two questions. One, is it Mark?
Mike.
Did you used to smoke?
Not cigarettes.
Yeah. Because I like to see Jim in the hot seat, I have a question for you, Jim. Could you talk a little bit about the ongoing maintenance of these bioretention basins? And how do we, as the bottom starts to fill up with silt and various, we talk about adding mulch, how do we deal with that?
Well, I think I spoke about that, so maybe you weren't listening.
No, listen to everybody else.
So, really, silt should not be a problem. And I think there has been problems, and he kind of demonstrated before. A lot during construction, if there's not proper BMPs putting in, and there's silt getting in your bioretention, that's been a problem. He demonstrated that contractor throwing dirt over the interlocking pavers and those things. And he also demonstrated a lot of energy reduction and entrapment of some of those things as they enter into the bioretention. So siltation shouldn't be not a problem. And we mentioned about organic material being added to it in response to you, leaf drops and things like that. He really, Mike, right? He really demonstrated this. A lot of these things are really nature.
Nature.
Yeah, it really is nature. And leaf drop and those like that are just natural organic material going into this.
One of the things we do on that site is that once a year they'll come in and replace some of the gravel that has a lot of
Right at the beginning.
stuff on it. It just looks bad, and you just get rid of it and bring in some more gravel.
Yeah, I think that there's challenges, the private project versus the public project.
Yeah.
The maintenance level is just not there to keep up with it, because I work with the public entity.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not like private clients, they can do that. So that's the challenge.
The interesting thing I've been told, and this is, I think, all of us, if they have a liner, there really is it's a pot. I mean, it really is a pot. And how long will it take before it gets root bound? How long do they last? We've been told 15 to 20 years. That'll make me 100 and so years old, so I won't even know until a long time. I've been also told that if you're taking a lot of complete streets, a lot of street pollutants, and I think it's carbon or copper that comes from battery. I'm not sure what the
Brake pads are covered.
yeah. I've been also told, and plant material cannot destroy that and get rid of it. And so we've been also told that in those high conditions where you're taking streets, those bioretention and you have liners may not last more than 5, 6, or 7 years. And then my next question will be, what do you do with the soil? Do you have to take the ASMAT and those things? I don't know. I know it could be.
Yeah, probably will. I know in the Bay Area where they have a lot of lakes and they use grasses to grow in there to collect all the pollutants. They have these boats. They're like, what are those boats in Florida, the Everglades? Yeah, those kind of things with the flat bottom. Anyway, they have like lawnmowers on them, and they just mow the grass and they throw it in the back of it, and then they take it to a toxic waste dump. And I imagine at some point somebody's going to make a regulation like that.
Oh, by the way, I have buffalo grass in my front yard.
Thanks, guys. Any other questions? All right. Well, thanks again to our sponsors, and please help yourself to all the appetizers, and the bar is open still, so please help yourself. and speak with our sponsors, because a lot of the products that we talked about and materials that we talked about are on display outside. All right, thanks guys.